I'm excited to rove around on the stage rather than stand behind the lectern because I am vertically challenged. I'm jinxed by this stage. The last time I was up here, I suffered a bit of a spider's bite to the face before getting up here. This time around, I'm exiting off the back of a cold, so I've got my hot water and cough lozenges, and I will bring them out if I need them. So apologies if there's a few coughs. Maybe you might want to mute me, or if there's any difficult questions, I might start coughing. Typically what we do at these sessions too is we tend to give away a TV. So I don't know if anyone remembers a couple of these sessions we do, and they tend to be Sony TVs, which is an indication of our panel. If we were to give away a TV today, because I was very disorganised, and apologies, but I hope you helped yourself to a coffee, it would be a TCL TV, because we're proud to announce that we've now also partnered with TCL, and we'll be bringing that TV data, opted in, of course, TV viewership data into our footprint in the coming months. We've talked a lot about diversity, and I think data is no different. Increasing the diversity of our panel is really, really important. I know that size and scale matters, and a lot of folks get hooked up on the numbers, but I think, thankfully for that survey, that the importance of data quality is really, really key too. So that's really exciting for us. But we'll start off, oops, I forgot, I do have a clicker, okay. I think we know that marketing budgets are continuing to be squeezed, but what we're going to talk about is, I suppose, viewership behaviours, especially on the big screen. So for those of you who don't know, Samba TV are an independent TV data and analytics organisation, a global company, and we understand opted-in TV viewership data that comes across the glass, whether that be broadcast linear, video on demand, OTT, TV ads, and even gaming. And I think it's fair to say that technology has certainly changed the way audiences consume content. I don't know if Di Ho's still in the crowd. Are you here, Di? Maybe not. Yep. I'll take a walk down memory lane. About 20 years ago, when we were selling TV on Channel 7, Blue Heelers and All Saints were consistently high-reaching, 2 million audiences on a week-to-week basis, which is, incredible. But we know TV viewership behaviours are shifting, eyeballs are splintering across platforms. As consumers, it's really, really exciting for us. We're spoilt for choice. There has been an explosion of video-on-demand content that's entering the market globally. We're in this golden age of television. We've got great big-name Hollywood actors featuring in, 12-part series. And as these eyeballs continue to splinter across platforms, I think, audience attention and consumption is certainly becoming spread thin across channels. And I think there's an interesting stat that we released in our State of Viewership report last week that showed that 73% of audiences were consuming the entire series of a season premiere as soon as it dropped on that platform within 14 days. So the way that we are consuming is certainly changing. We've got time-based viewing, which has historically been the way, but we're certainly moving towards demand-based streaming. It's been challenging to navigate and optimise across certain media channels, especially both offline and online. You have different buying metrics or different ways to plan, activate and measure media. You might be planning at an aggregate television audience measurement region level, but you might be then optimising against much more granular metrics and geo levels as well. And I think lastly, what makes it quite challenging is we are certainly in this converged state. We know that the future is digitally led, but we've kind of got one heel, one heel in offline and one heel in online as well. And making sense of those, not only from a marketer's point of view and a publisher's point of view, but also being able to connect those systems, enterprise systems versus SaaS platforms as well. It's really, really challenging. So what we're here to talk about is obviously I'm going to give you a 1,000-foot view of the case study, explain our technology again at a high level. Then we will have the experts to come up and talk a little bit deeper about the tactical approach that Optus took. So at a high level, Optus wanted to extend their consumer campaign. They wanted to extend the reach on top of their TV campaign. So pretty simple. Quite complicated. We know that TV is extremely great at reaching a lot of audiences quickly, and trying to get additional reach on top of these mass mediums is very, very challenging. So what we did was we partnered with Optus, and they leveraged our automatic content recognition data, which we pioneered sort of well over a decade ago. And again, it is opted-in TV viewership data. We have a piece of software that is embedded at the chipset level of a few 100,000 televisions in Australia, and we are identifying opted-in TV viewership behaviours across broadcast, video on demand, and ads, which is what the case study is about today. What we've also done is we've taken a step change as well, or an addition in our methodology, and we're able to understand TV viewership consumption down to a granular postcode level. This has been a really interesting insight to have a look at, especially when you're looking at how effective your TV campaign is performing, not only at a broad geo-TAM level, but also down to a postcode level. And so what we're able to identify is what postcodes are potentially underexposed to the TV campaign, and there's an opportunity to go and readdress those audiences and increase reach efficiently, and what areas perhaps are also highly exposed as well. What are the opportunities there to be able to rejig the current media channel that you're working in? So what we worked with Optus was we were looking at extending the reach across BVOD to start with. So again, I must caveat, this is the first sort of insight that we're sharing today, and this is the first channel that we're showing these insights about. So this was the current channel strategy. We do have other brands and advertisers and entertainment marketers leveraging other insights, because geo is a common metric that can be used across multiple channels. So we're sort of looking at the biggest ticket item on your media plan, which is television, and we're tying and synchronising that to help inform other media channel buying strategies. It's all about driving efficiencies, and that does remain in the current channel strategy of BVOD there. So what we did is we partnered with Optus and the agency, and they were leveraging our True Reach and Frequency platform, which shows the deduplication of TV and CTV and digital. In this instance, it was TV and BVOD, to understand the overall exposure across certain TV viewership behaviours, whether they were heavy, medium and light TV households. What was the reach and frequency over the time? Where did that start to plateau, and where were there opportunities to try and increase incrementality? Also, reach and frequency by device level was capable across Australia, and also reach and frequency overlap by networks and channels as well, to understand, okay, where other channels could also be optimised in this particular mix. So what the results proved is what I mentioned at the top of the session. We saw that linear TV, broadcast TV, reached 61% of total households, a huge reach number. TV is doing what it does best. It's driving great reach and great reach quickly. We then, when we saw and we analysed the BVOD campaign, there was an overlap obviously of BVOD and linear, which added a further additional 11% of reach. And really, I suppose the important message here that we were able to identify was, what did the BVOD, like, where could you only get incrementality from BVOD only? And that was a further 3%. And if you're looking at trying to get additional reach off a very high base number, and you're trying to do it efficiently, there are certain, obviously, this is a sort of a great result as a first pass for this particular client. So overall, 75% of households were reached, and BVOD brought a 3% incrementality. So some of the interesting insights that we showed amongst our households was that there was a frequency problem, and we can appreciate and understand that. And what we understood, that 94% of Optus's TV ad impressions were reaching the top 55% of broadcast linear TV household viewers. They were seeing an average of around 25 ads across the campaign. However, and obviously that has branding implications, but there was also an opportunity. What we found that there was, the other 45% of households, 6% of Optus's TV ad impressions were reaching those 45% of households, and they were seeing on average just over 4 ads when we're talking about frequency. So how do we help measure and manage the frequency of this? If we look at the sort of this stacked bar chart, what we can see is that absolutely, we know the vast majority of TV-only impressions were delivered to heavy and medium linear TV households. We can see that big red bar there of 93%. But what we started to understand was there was more of an even distribution across TV and BVOD impressions to those exposed to both a TV and BVOD ad. And I think you can probably guess what the next bar chart's going to show in the trend line here. And we found that BVOD was tremendously valuable in exposing and finding these harder to reach light linear TV households, which represented 45%. So it's a great story and a great insight. And so if we look at the BVOD campaign in silo, what we showed was that the incremental household rate for BVOD was just over 21%. Therefore, if you think about it or if you flip it, it means that basically over 21 households out of every 100 for this particular strategy would have been missed if we didn't leverage BVOD. So again, another interesting insight here about the Optus campaign. So what have we got to do to wrap up this at a 1,000-foot view before we hand it over to the experts? I think really it's about using these new insights to help synchronise and help inform planning to maximise reach across multiple media channels, using potentially the biggest ticket item on your media plan, or in fact TV viewership behaviours. Understanding deduplicated campaign reach across linear TV and CTV is absolutely crucial to help optimise in those existing channels as well. And speaking of optimisation, using those insights in flight to be able to optimise towards driving as much reach as possible. It's about working in potentially that existing channel, but making it work harder for you, because we know that every marketing dollar absolutely counts, and everyone and TV is, has always been made extremely accountable, and there's no sort of stopping with that trend line. So that's it from me in terms of a bit of an overview. Thank God I didn't cough. But I'd like to ask up to the stage Lauren and Dan to commence the panel. Oh yeah, I might as well. Yeah. There if you like. Yeah, go for it.
Hello.
Glad to be doing this sat down rather than stood up like an exponential growth chart, as we would be. Thanks, Yaz. That's really interesting data. I get to do the easy bit of just piling in with the questions, but as a sort of watcher of the session, super interesting case study, not least of I think we always hear about the incrementality of BVOD and getting to an audience that linear doesn't necessarily reach, but I think often very difficult to find the specific gaps and the what to do with that data. Like, where do I actually then target my BVOD rather than just, well, I should pile in some extra dollars. So I think it'd be good during this bit of time we've got to unpack some of that, of how Optus, not just use the data but then activate it against it. But perhaps before we get into that, it'd be good to just get the background on the campaign. What were you looking to do? What was the strategy?
Sure, I'm going to back up a couple of steps. So as we were heading into our new fiscal year, some of the key challenges we had was recovering trust. We had a pretty challenging 12 to 18 months coming into this fiscal. So that was number one on our list, really recovering our brand. Generating future demand to fuel kind of that growth for us was the second thing. And also we had EBIT challenges. So how could we find that efficiency to further support EBIT across the business? And all of that was kind of amongst this landscape of media inflation, declining marketing budgets, felt like a really humongous, difficult challenge for us. And we've long believed in AV, we've invested in AV channels at Optus. We really believe in that power of connection and storytelling and attention that comes with AV. But we'd always done it in kind of these very big, splashy, kind of tentpole ways. And we'd sponsored lots of programs, we'd done the Women's World Cup, but that's not the position we found ourselves in for this fiscal year. We had this efficiency challenge. We really needed to demonstrate to our customers that we were investing in our network and build back that trust. And that meant we had to look a little bit differently at our AV approach. And we kind of came up with a bit of a saying of being more FMCG, which I know must sound really obvious, but going back to the basics. How are we on air more often, more efficiently, and talking to our new customers, kind of that very tried and tested Byron Sharp approach. And I guess that's where we landed when we thought about, okay, how do we show up in AV this year? What we also had was a massive, amazing data. So we have our customer experience data, our network data, our commercial data. We wanted to make sure that we were using all of that to show up in the areas where we had a right to win. So show up in the SA3s in our case, where we have great network experience, where we have great CX. So that was a really important part of our kind of addressable AV strategy, to make sure that we were showing up in the places that were really important to us commercially.
I think most of us would see lots of Optus ads across the portfolio. And yeah, hearing you talk there of a big proponent of AV through strategies, how do you approach sort of cross-screen measurement and total TV measurement in general?
So this was a bit of a new challenge for us. As I said, we had our new strategy, kind of be more FMCG, be more efficient. And we really needed to validate that, because we were taking quite a different approach, and the business was, you know, a tiny bit uncomfortable, and kind of how we're actually going to prove that this was working. So I think with Samba, the one thing we really wanted to look at was, what's that cost per incremental household that we're getting through BVOD? What's a benchmark for that? We didn't really have an idea of what that was or what good look like. And for this campaign, it was about under $1.80 was kind of that cost to acquire those additional BVOD households for us. Now, unsure at this point, is that a great number, average number? That was the whole reason why we measured it, so that we can look at that number going forward. How do we really maximise that? How do we find that incrementality? And for us, that number was really important, because thinking back to those underexposed households, and the fact for us they were in those really important SA3s, that's 300,000 potential new customers in areas where we have great network and great customer experience that we could find. So that was kind of number one. The second one was a partnership with BeatGrid. So we wanted to test out this FMCG strategy. We wanted to understand, how is our creative impacting how our consumers felt about us? And what was the impact of that creative on price, on trust of Optus? And what we saw is, amongst all of our channels, BVOD was the most efficient in generating that positive lift against our customers, so tick. And that was closely followed by YouTube. And what we did is start to take those insights to optimize and shape the strategy while we're in flight as well. So looking at our partner selection, looking at our unit mix, looking to optimize the different creative messages we had running during the period.
So looking through the data, there's one in there that stuck out to me as pretty brutal. And probably not very FMCG. And actually one of those things that linear TV is not normally called out for. It's probably actually more of a BVOD challenge. And that's the 94% of impressions being delivered to heavy viewership houses. And then those households getting, 25 plus ads. I'm imagining that wasn't sort of baked into the original strategy. So how did that, seeing that data, what impact did that have on planning and your approach?
It's a bit of an oh shit moment, like, oh, that's not quite what we expected. That number felt quite high. And again, we kind of went back to the data, went back to this mix of amazing measurement partners that we were using to go, okay, let's dig into this a little bit more. What is the impact of that really kind of high frequency? And, bearing in mind as well, that frequency was April to August, so fairly long campaign period. But what the data showed us is that there was a frequency sweet spot, somewhere in about 5 to 7 frequency. And actually, after we hit that point, our audience were getting really fatigued. They were becoming detractors of the brand, which is definitely not what we set out to do. We set out on this build back brand trust kind of journey. So immediately, and I think this is the great thing about being able to optimize in flight, is we look to remove some of those creatives out the mix that were in particular driving that detraction for us, optimize, and also I think, we had a part to play in this, and that was we weren't necessarily doing things we know were really easy, like best practice lead time. So we were booking late. That means, our media agency, don't have the best ability to buy, with ideal conditions. So we also had to look at what is the role we were playing in this by not doing those things that are really helpful to our partners to set them up for success as well.
Never the marketer's fault, is it? But nice to hear that it is called out here. That's interesting. Sorry, this is a gap in my knowledge of the platform. But so you were able to optimize in flight, so it wasn't sort of PCR a couple of months later. You made changes in flight during the campaign.
Yeah, I think we can often set and forget, especially with linear TV. It kind of, we have a lead time and we book it and we move on. We had, really front of mind that we had this measurement approach that we were putting a lot of kind of effort and investment into. So let's actually make the changes in the moment. Let's not just keep pushing on when we can see actually it's driving an adverse result for us. So we actually opened up our partner selection. So we looked at how do we use all of the kind of major Australian broadcasters. As I said, we optimised the creative message. And we did that, within kind of a couple of weeks of getting those initial results.
Yeah, nice. And obviously that story of BVOD giving underexposed audiences, I think we've most heard that before. But what is it that you sort of did? How did you approach your targeting? What did you change, particularly for that BVOD group?
Yeah, as I said, it was really about that reliance on that network and customer experience data and making sure that we were using the Samba dashboard, which is amazing for all of your paid media teams, your agency. It democratizes the data. It puts it in front of everyone every day when you're looking at optimizations to look at where were those geographic areas where we weren't reaching people, because they were the areas where we knew we had headroom, we had growth, and we had a great network. So it was really about using the data to help inform that BVOD strategy. The other thing we looked at was a programming strategy. So using VOZ data, we looked at what are those programs in BVOD that are getting that incrementality, they're really getting the reach that is not quite the same pattern for linear. So, those of you that are fans of Love Island, just me, that's a huge hit on BVOD. So we kind of looked to find those programs where we were getting great incrementality and it was delivering for us really efficiently as well.
Nice. Just on that data, was there anything different in the data, the ACR data that perhaps you wouldn't have got somewhere else or that was new for you?
I think just being able to quantify the lift, actually having that cost per incremental household, being able to look at what we would have missed out on. That was a data point we didn't have before that we have now and forms a great baseline as we move into the future. Yeah,
nice. Just to pick up there, you mentioned about creative, and I think there's probably something interesting to dig in a bit more there of, in reviewing the messaging of, I might be wrong, but I imagine perhaps at a lower frequency that messaging might have delivered, but maybe at 25 it might start to become a bit annoying. How did that play out for you? What did you do there?
I think it was great to have data points to sit down with your creative partners and talk to them about wear out or fatigue. We had a very rational, straight down the line message. It wasn't necessarily entertaining, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't driving that connection with audiences. It was a really important message for us to put out there, but it was just too straight down the line and maybe a little bit boring, especially when you've seen it 25 times. So I think, how do we have those data points for creative agencies? One thing we've done well in the past is have, endless creative variations for digital video, different end frames, different cuts. And for some reason, it was not something we'd really thought about for linear. In linear, we were kind of, we had, one or two variations. But what we realised going forward is actually we need the variations for linear TV. So when we're now kind of developing creative strategy, the media team has a seat at that table. We're using these learnings to look at what are the weights, how many creative variations do we need, what do those messages need to say, and really using that data to inform creative strategy rather than just saying, oh, that's a beautiful ad, or having the creatives lead that. It's very much a partnership together of what is the right creative mix and what is the right message as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because often do a huge amount of testing in pre-production. Like, is this going to be the right sort of messaging? Does the ad, before we start to put it out into the world, is it going to be right? Nothing. Perhaps maybe, as you say, testing in digital channels, and then a far later point in time, PCR, look at, did that creative work, but it's kind of too late then. So that middle ground of data, that's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the Google team touched on that in-market testing, that incrementality testing, and having that approach while you're in flight, not just saving it all for the PCR 6 weeks after you're out.
It's point in time, it's too late, right? More
100%.
often than not. Yeah. So how, aside from just necessarily the core of this campaign, how is your future approach to sort of marketing effectiveness sort of moving forward?
Yeah, so I think I've covered kind of that more short-term in-campaign piece, which is very about, you know, the immediate measurement. So how are we optimizing our programming, our durations, our unit mix, our partners, our frequency? That's absolutely something that having the Samba data and this approach has allowed us to do with a lot more rigor. But I think what is also critical is finding those metrics that are commercially focused and absolutely proving out that marketing and you know, the millions of dollars we are very lucky to spend in market is actually having a positive commercial return. So that's where kind of for us that partnership with MMM and Mutinex is kind of our key partner there, really comes into play. And I think one of the great things for AV is we've been able to get down to what are the incremental unit sales per AV channel. So we can look at across BVOD, YouTube, linear, SVOD, what revenue is that delivering back to the Optus business with a, you know, a great degree of confidence, and really have those conversations with our exco around the value of each, you know, each channel and its, you know, its impact on our growth. And I think we are a business that is still, you know, we're very bottom of the funnel focused. We're very retail and reactive driven, and I look at the data before from Mutinex of that rising search, rising affiliates. We're definitely in that camp, but I think having this data has allowed us to create a much more valuable picture for AV and its long-term impact on our revenue.
Yeah, it's such a good story of also being able to then not just set and forget, not just push out into the world. It needs to be separate to what you might be doing in, whether it's a search or affiliates that's real time. Being able to optimize semi-real time to your AV, that's super interesting. I might just pause for a second to see if there's any questions out in the room. If I do have more, but don't shout at once. All right, we'll carry on. Yas, not to let you off the hook. Could you maybe give us a bit more of an explainer on the geo model? Because obviously it goes quite deep here.
Yeah, sure. So what we do is we identify viewership across, obviously, you know, over 2,500 postcodes that there are in Australia. We have to obviously have a certain number of minimum TVs in those postcodes in double digits. We then analyse the viewership of each individual postcode, and then what we do is we then stack rank to bring relativity. This is about as techie as I'm getting. We stack rank them to give them relativity from obviously lowest to highest. Then what we do is we, with a lot of data science work involved, we then take the bottom potentially 20% of postcodes, and we use that to help inform reach maximisation strategies. So that could be based on a television campaign, but it can be also based on TV viewership behaviours as well, something that's quite popular with entertainment marketers.
And privacy, obviously a hot button topic.
It's a hot topic. Yep, so we built our ACR business. We're actually a B2C business. We actually built our relationship with the consumer from day one, and then we branched out into obviously what we're doing now. With regards to how we collect the data, you actually have to, and I think this is really important to call out, and it's quite unique for us, you have to manually opt into the data. It is not automatically ticked. So when you get your television, You can easily opt out. It's not hidden within several menu screens of the television set. We have built capabilities around Privacy Manager, which is IAB TCF framework approved. So we've really sort of come with privacy as a product, and you can opt out, have the right to be forgotten. We operate in several markets because we are a global TV data company, and we apply the strictest, most privacy laws across all of our countries, obviously GDPR markets, CCPA, and we're obviously ready for the impending changes that, that we're all sort of watching taking place.
Yeah, nice. Just in the last couple of minutes before we wrap up, Laura, I might just come back to you. The 3% doesn't necessarily on paper look particularly massive. I think obviously media practitioners here would obviously dive straight on that it's quite hard to get to that 3%. I'm interested to just hear how you've gone about the messaging of that to a broader audience and how it was picked up in the broader Optus sort of leadership group.
Yeah, I think for us the 3% is a great number. If we could convert at our conversion rate that 325,000, that's an awesome result. Trying to find growth in this market is really tough. So where we can find incrementality and when we can bring that new growth in and generate that future demand, I'm super happy with 325,000 people that we can maybe convert into amazing Optus customers. So I think it's a great result, but also it gives us a benchmark, it gives us a number to work and kind of optimize towards. We had a little bit of headroom, we could have spent more money, we could have kind of zoned in on some more postcodes to find that incrementality, and that's kind of what we'll take forward into our next campaign to make sure that we can, keep dialing that number up and keep finding those really hard to reach viewers.
Yeah, nice. And as always, good thing to leave these sessions with something to take away. What advice for brands having been through seeing this data, implementing it, using it?
Measure what matters, have a really clear plan for all the things that are important to you to measure, and a really aligned plan with all of your stakeholders, and collaborate. So, this was a great partnership between Samba, BeatGrid, our MROI partner, and Kinesso and It took a lot of coming together to make this work, and a lot of smart people in the room, not just Optus and Samba, like a whole army of people that helped us kind of bring this campaign to life and really measure. And then once you're in flight, don't be scared to take those learnings and optimize and go with the data and have some confidence in it and make those changes.
Yeah, that ownership of when it wasn't what you were hoping for, like the negative and then turning that into a positive, super interesting. Cool, well, thanks very much. There isn't any further questions now?